Welcome to Feature Fanatics, where we talk about the movies that have us obsessed, excited, and inspired. And I'm Gaul. And unfortunately, Alan's not here with us today, but we have a very exciting guest and topic. Today, we're talking about a director whose work treads the funny and the devastating, the real and the surreal, the human relationships and the phone relationships. And he's also part of Jackass, weirdly enough. It's Spike Jonze who will be the subject of today's director spotlight. Joining us as our special guest is a filmmaker who is also the co-founder of For Your Reference Entertainment and the writer-director of Tomorrow, a film in which a young girl struggles to get back home when she starts waking up as a different person every day. It's already screened at film festivals including Cinequest in San Jose, California, and the New York Cinefest, and will soon screen at the North Hollywood Cinefest as well. Let's welcome Kellen Gibbs to the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to talk a little bit about the Spike Jonze with the weird and the fun and the exciting. Such an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah, he's only made a couple, but they always stand out. There's a reason that he's like so well regarded, even though he's only had four movies across like 25 years.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
He's
Sweet.
a very unique filmmaker. He's directed again some really weird films, some surreal ones, some movies that are one that people have debated if it's kid friendly or not. He's also part of Jackass, which I only found out like after I had watched a bunch of his movies.
Uh,
He's an Oscar winner, and that's of course Spike Jonze. Let's talk a bit about like introduce like how we sort of got into his movies, what we sort of where we sort of stand about his filmography.
sure. I don't know how you did, but I honestly think I got to his movies really late. I knew about him, but I probably didn't really watch his stuff until her. And then I went backwards and was like, who is this guy who's making this really cool kind of love story that I haven't seen anything like it before, you know? So it was her, and then I think after that I went on kind of like a Being John Malkovich, and then I did Adaptation, and then just recently watched Where the Wild Things Are, which I only had caught like probably half of it before that. But man, that's a you said it. That's a sad movie. That's a that's an interesting one. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
good.
it's we'll get into it for sure. Because I also saw it like to prepare for this.
Uh-huh,
I'd missed it when it came out.
uh-huh,
But yeah, similar to you. I mean, I'm younger. Like I when Her came out, I was like 11 or 12. So
uh-huh,
that was the first movie that was like when I was really getting into like more mature films that weren't
sure.
just like, movies that someone as young as that would watch.
Uh-huh.
But it honestly, like without really knowing anything about Spike Jonze or what he had done before, it became one of my favorites of that year, and it
Yeah,
I think it's still one of my favorite movies. We'll get into it. Let's move into his first film that we'll be talking about,
sure.
and that's Being John Malkovich.
Hmm.
Came out in 1999, and it was, I believe, his feature debut, and got him an Oscar nomination for Best Director, which
Wow.
is the dream, and also got a Best Supporting Actress nomination for Catherine Keener. And the movie starts with John Cusack. I forget what kind of company he's working at. Do you remember?
Oh,
Like
I
what
don't
his
even.
job is?
Uh-huh. He yeah. Well, he isn't he hired for them to like go through the files and just organize the files for them.
Yeah. So basically, he finds a portal in
It is.
his office looks kind of shitty, but
Uh-huh.
it does happen to have a portal into the mind of John Malkovich.
And
And yeah,
the
that's
building
that's your
is just
pitch.
like too small. I love how the building is made so it's like slightly small and everyone's like bending over to try and walk
Yeah,
around it. Yeah, it's
it's
great.
already like you talked about in your movie, like you wanted everything else to be normal besides this one fantasy element.
Mhm.
He already starts this movie with like things being eccentric, like you have to like duck down
Totally.
and stuff.
Yeah, I noticed on his thing is like he's so detail oriented with his stuff too. He has like little tiny things that just stand out in all of his movies and just kind of make them like really quirky and interesting. But it's like those types of things, like having to tilt your head, or like the way that John Cusack like talks in this movie where people don't understand him, and like these are like cool things which I wonder it's probably like script things as well, right? Like Charlie Kaufman bringing that to the table because Charlie Kaufman wrote this one, and it's just like a like an interesting, you know. I just love their pairing. To be honest, I want to see them do another movie together, but it's just like a very cool pairing, and what a first movie to come out with, right?
Yeah, so being John Malkovich, I don't know how big John Malkovich was, where like I don't know how obvious he was the choice to be like the actor playing himself.
Yeah.
Like it's not like the unbearable weight of massive talent where it's like Nick Cage is one of the most like biggest fan bases. I feel
Totally.
like he was already Oscar nominated, I think, for In the Line of Fire.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I think maybe it would be equal to like having like a Being Adam Driver now or something, where
Yeah.
he was still known, but he is so good in this movie. Actually, like John Malkovich's performance, I feel like is taken for granted just because we don't think of like him having to play all the transformations
Uh-huh.
is so good.
It's
But I
just
think he does it so well.
yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of overlooked in a lot of his performances. I thought about that when I was watching it too. Is like he's been in Empire of the Sun. He was in what's the other one I'm thinking of? Oh, the Burn After Reading, which I love. And like
Yeah.
every time I see him in a performance, I'm like, man, this guy is really good.
Oh, and Shadow of the Vampire, that was
Uh-huh.
him, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think
It's
In the
it,
Line of Fire, I just mentioned. I think that's my favorite performance of his. I don't know if you
yeah.
watched it, but he's basically it's like a very like Kevin Spacey in Seven esque performance, and he's like
Okay.
really menacing.
Interesting, because he's almost become, and I don't know if it was this movie that did it, but he's almost become a caricature of himself, right? Like we know John Malkovich as this John Malkovich as this guy that kind of gets loud and kind of intense and like I don't know, just watching his other performances, like oh, this guy has some range.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's just a very like I guess impressionable actor. Like people can do impressions of like he has a very distinctive voice. I
Totally.
think that might be a part of it too. That he's just like yeah, I don't know, but it's a good way to see it because a lot of what he does now is kind of just like he shows up and he's John Malkovich. Like he's not
Yes. Yeah.
his his earlier years, like Shadow of the Vampire and Burn After Reading, like and before was a
Uh,
lot more like him flexing his acting skills. Now he's kind of just like showing up to get the paycheck, but he's
he did.
always been
Yeah,
yeah.
he
Go ahead.
did the like Christopher Walken type thing. Like I always kind of see him as like
Ooh,
because Christopher Walken's a great actor, right? But he's become again the caricature of himself, and like people know him as the Christopher Walken with the speech patterns that he will give, and kind of the same thing with John Malkovich too, with his kind of like I always keep saying intensity, but the intensity he gives for the situation. I always think of Burn After Reading with his yelling.
yeah, because I think
I
of
love it.
like one thing I love about this movie is that it's first of all it's insanely funny. Like the delivery of the characters is weird, but it's also it gets deeply dark. I think
Totally.
especially thanks to Catherine Keener's performance because she's kind of like the menacing, wealthy like Karen lady
Hmm.
who comes in and like messes shit up. But it's also like kind of deep. Like it talks about like identity, like body insecurities and
Yeah.
whatnot, and the way they sort of have like a weird three-way relationship between John Cusack,
And
Cameron
his wife.
Diaz, and
Yeah.
Catherine Keener, and then you have like the conspiracy of this is what kills me: the old people who all want to share his body, like the
Yes.
conspiracy of it.
It's
Um,
yeah, no, the cool thing is like it's funny. I'm gonna relate this back, but you bringing me on here because I did a movie of identity, and now we have this movie that, as I was kind of rewatching some of it, I feel like a similarity of like exploring identity, very much in a different way, but like it's just a cool like kind of who am I type like psychological movie of these characters going on this journey and with making the guy a puppeteer, which is just an awesome way to like start your character out to kind of end up puppeteering John Malkovich. Like I love when
yeah,
they do that when they kind of like set you up and they're the perfect person to kind of go on that journey. And he was with his awkwardness and the way he goes about it. It's just a great like step into the kind of what the message that he was trying to convey, which I think was like identity and who are you and feeling uncomfortable in your body and feeling more comfortable being somebody else
yeah.
and it's great like that's the thing that I love about his films is like thematically, and I don't know if you get that a lot nowadays with bigger films, is like there's so much theme that you're presenting in these situations, and there's so much like thinking, like you're allowing your audience to take a scene that might be funny and weird but kind of really think about it.
These kind of movies don't get as huge of an audience today, but
Hmm.
every now and then there's a movie where like the weirdness complements to like the thematic, something like Triangle of Sadness maybe,
Yeah.
um, that sort of embraces like the awkward. Also like the puppeteering stuff. I love the scene where like John Malkovich he's like quitting acting to become a puppeteer because he's being controlled by Cusack. I think Cameron Diaz has that really good, which I think this is my favorite performance of hers ever, where she's sitting down, and she's like, "I just want to be John Malkovich," and it's this really like deep moment because it's
Yeah.
like about like this body dysmorphia and so on, and then of
Did
course
you?
just the climax gets so dark. I'm looking at the credits now. Brad Pitt has a half-second long cameo, who's like, um, who's like in a documentary about John Malkovich's
Yeah.
career when it comes to his transition. So
Did you
it
see? Did you see David Fincher in there too?
I don't
Like
remember that at
the
all.
the I caught that. I was kind of rewatching some stuff to refresh myself, and there's that scene where with the same one where Brad Pitt's in, and they're going through like him changing his career, and then all of a sudden there's this, and he's not even playing David Fincher. I think he's playing like a doctor or something, and it's just like
Okay, I'm
it,
reading it now. It says he's appearing as Christopher Bing in the American Arts and Culture documentary on John Malkovich.
yes, yeah. I was
That's
like,
really
is that
funny.
David Fincher? What is he doing in there?
That's really funny. And
And
then
then like,
Sean Penn also cameos here.
uh-huh.
Was what I'm reading. I forgot about that too. And Charlie Sheen's in it as himself. This is a movie that I can just recommend to a lot of people if they tell me like I love movies, I love film. It's
Totally.
like it takes a very I guess specific audience, but it's
Mm.
great that this kind of movie actually got a lot of awards love and still holds up for so many film lovers or filmmakers who talk about this movie. So I'd say like again when my friends like come to me and they say like I love like these kind of like these movies that are like taking swings or like trusting their audience to like understand like the intellect or the themes. I'm like,
Totally.
if I like Being John Malkovich is usually a film that I recommend right away.
Do you feel like you have to know John Malkovich if you to watch this movie, or do you think it transcends that?
Honestly, no, I think it does transcend that.
Hmm.
I don't think it's like Nicolas Cage in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent where it's like
Yeah.
referencing his career. Because I think a lot of the movies that you mentioned, like or we talked about, like Shadow of the Vampire, In the Line of Fire, etc. I watched after I watched Being John Malkovich.
Yeah, I agree though. I think that the movie itself, and I think that's kind of a tribute to the writing of it, that you don't have to. You could probably say, I mean, it makes it better being having it be John Malkovich, but you could put someone else in there, right? Like you could fill that with, and that's probably. I wonder if it's all like I think you might have mentioned this at the beginning. If it was always being John Malkovich, or if they had, if that was the actor that they found to be able to use for it. But it's
Yeah,
kind of
no, because like when I first heard there was a movie called Being John Malkovich, I'm like, oh, it's about like his
life.
emotional journey, and then
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he's not even the main character.
yeah,
So it brings
exactly.
up the fun question: if they made it today, who do you think it would have been?
Oh
Like
God,
the
they,
perfect choice.
no man, I don't know. You said Adam Driver. That's a kind of interesting choice. I feel like you need someone with a little
Yeah,
bit more. But that's another question, and not to stray off too much. Like movie stars nowadays, there's not as many movie stars like that, right? There's not as many people as distinguishable because of, and there's a lot of talk about that nowadays with like Marvel movies and like superhero movies and like just whether or not we have movie stars. Whether do we have a John Malkovich now? I don't know.
yeah. Let's continue in this journey in his filmography. Now
Sure.
let's talk a bit about Adaptation.
Hmm.
This came out in 2002 and was also nominated for a couple Oscars. It was nominated for Best Actor for Nicolas Cage, Best Supporting Actress Meryl Streep. Chris Cooper won Best Supporting Actor, and it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I want to start. I think this will be like an interesting way to start this segment. Is when you see like who's nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars, it's credited as Charlie Kaufman and Donald Kaufman. So it's like the only instance that a fictional person, like not a real person, is credited at the Oscars,
Uh-huh.
which I think I love that just everyone in the industry plays along the jokes because they like so love Charlie Kaufman's writing style, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's funny because that's the fictional brother that he has, right, in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. That's it's just it's one of those big meta things again, right? It's back to both those movies being John Malkovich and now adaptation is just like they're exploring something that's I don't know anyone else who's done it to the extent of like something like this, right? Where it's like it's talking about a person. The main character is the writer of the movie, and then a fictional brother, and it's so weird. I kind of start to think, how do you get movies like this made? And then how do you win awards for them? Like that's so
it's,
crazy. It's so cool that they exist.
Charlie Kaufman was actually like tapped to adapt the book The Orchid Thief, written by
Hmm.
Susan Orlean, who's played by Meryl Streep in this film. So
Uh-huh.
that whole aspect is like true, but then he was like, I guess, pissed off about his struggles to adapt it. So he wrote a script about this experience
Uh-huh.
and he showed it to Columbia Pictures. And I it still boggles my mind that Sony was like, we're down. Let's make this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it starts. So I actually, when I started this movie, I knew it was about a struggling writer played by Nicolas Cage, but I didn't know much when I pressed play, besides like knowing who was behind it.
Hmm.
So when the movie started, and you see the set of Being John Malkovich, and then it pans to like Charlie Kaufman, and it's Nicolas Cage. I
Hmm.
didn't know he was playing Charlie Kaufman until I watched the movie. So I already was like loving this movie when it starts.
So is this would you call this an indirect sequel to Being John Malkovich?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and I think they play off each other so well because I think they have things that happen to them. Even though Adaptation doesn't have anything fantasy, there's
Hmm.
stuff like the climax, like the last 20 minutes with like the chase and the alligator. That's sort of like, oh, is this a dream? Or or like he's sort of narrating his life. He's sort of making a script out of what you're seeing because what you're seeing is the script. He's
Uh-huh.
like, is this really what's happened to him? Is etc. Like I think
Yeah.
Charlie Kaufman taking this struggle and then turning it into fantasy could very much be also what we're seeing in the movie.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. It's just crazy. Also, it's funny. We're talking about the unbearable weight of massive talent, and then now here's Nicolas Cage in Adaptation. He picks some. That's like the perfect casting for something like this, for him to come in and be like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll be you, Charlie Kaufman, for a movie, and your fake brother." That's funny.
And this is actually my favorite Nicolas Cage performance. I don't know about you, but this is like my favorite thing that he's done.
Oh, there's so many. That's a hard one to pick because he's such a it's funny because it's the same thing as John Malkovich. He's a caricature of himself, and he was also a really good. He's still a really good actor, but like I think that's what happens when you get so big and fame kind of gets to you is like you become your name. You become Nicolas Cage rather than just. Yeah, that's probably who it could be. Being Nicolas Cage would be an interesting movie.
He does this movie with no ego at all. Like
Yeah.
he's poking fun of himself. He's saying like I've been arrogant, I've been lonely, I've pushed away people in my life. Like even fictional people he's uh he's like been shitty too. But
Mhm.
it's hilarious how much he's able to poke fun at himself.
Yeah, yeah, and he just allows it. Like I listen to him. If you ever get a chance, you probably have. But like listening to him talk and like do like interviews, he just seems like he's all about the art, which is very nice and kind of refreshing to hear. He just enjoys the process and making of scripts, and telling stories, and it's cool to. You said like no ego, like taking out his ego is that's what I feel with him completely. Is like he just kind of lays it all out for you and lets you be the judge, and he's not judging himself either.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting on that realm is Susan Orlean, who wrote the book. When she found out about this idea and she heard about it, she was really nervous and she was kind of angry that they sort of took her story and decided to make, I guess, a bit of a joke out of it. Um, but allegedly, she saw the movie and she really liked it and she loved Meryl Streep's portrayal of her,
Mm.
which again, like you're taking a real life person and then you're showing something that obviously never happened, like the sexual relationship there, and then them
Uh-huh.
becoming like attempted murderers. Um, so like, and I'm guessing like he did that with no permission from them.
Yeah,
So that's really funny.
it's just this is the way I wanted to take this story. That's so awesome. I didn't know how meta it was until you brought that up. That there was an actual novel that he was writing that he did his experience. But imagine being the writer of that novel and like, oh yeah, so we're gonna tell your movie or your book into a movie. Oh wait, but we're gonna do it this way, and it's gonna be totally different. And like that must have been crazy.
There's segments of the movie that are just showing like the orchid thief scenes. Like it's just Chris Cooper showing Meryl Streep about the plants.
Uh,
And I think also like so like Charlie Kaufman, he's really struggling to show like how does he frame the orchid thief. So I think like the fact that he's finding like the beauty in these flowers, and he goes with, I forget who it was. I don't remember if it was Maggie Gyllenhaal or someone else to like the flower gallery or whatever it was, where he's like finding the beauty in art. I think that's also part of the themes of the movie.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, it's a struggle. Like I mean, this trying to write stuff. That was the thing that really hit me is like the struggle of writing and the struggle of creating, and you said like the beauty of art, you know, it's a great representation of someone trying to take something and turn it into like and say something with it. You know, that's his whole thing with, was it David Mamet? He goes into the thing with David Mamet and he yells at him. He's like, "What are you
Oh,
talking
it's
about?"
Robert McKee is the
Oh,
name of
Robert
the
McKee.
person.
Yeah, sorry.
He's played by Brian Cox.
Yeah, yeah. It's hilarious that whole conversation that he has with him. That's the struggle of creating something, is like trying to find your place in it, trying to find the character, and the same thing with like the whole. I'm gonna write this scene, and then he sits down to write, and he's like, maybe I should eat something, and then he's like thinking about going and having a snack and everything to you know to
And
procrastinate
I love
from
that
writing.
and I love that Brian Cox like yells at him, and then right after he's like, you know what, I could do something to drink. Want to come with me? And they just have like a regular
Yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
In terms of what I said earlier about Being John Malkovich, I recommend this movie for sure for people. Like I think when it comes to like the movies that have been like first time watches for me in these last like 3 years, I think those two movies will like stand out for me. It's like ones that I would recommend.
They're both movies that kind of stand out, like you said,
Yeah.
and like they're just so unique in themselves. Even more unique, I think, than the later films that he did. Like, and it probably comes down to, you know, the writer of the. You can totally see the writer's voice in the first two that he has.
So yeah, now let's move into Where the Wild Things Are. It came out 2009. So this is it was much more expensive. This movie cost 100 million and it made 100 million as well, but with like other like expenses, I think it was technically considered to be like a box office disappointment. I'm not sure. And funnily enough, I didn't mention, but Jonathan Demme actually produced Adaptation, which is kind of cool. And this one of the producers is Tom Hanks.
Oh wow,
I don't know
I
if
did not know that.
Spike Jonze, this was, I guess, the first one that he wrote. Also, he wrote it with Dave Eggers, who, funnily enough, we talk about Hanks and Eggers. I once saw in San Francisco Dave Eggers like holding an interview with Tom Hanks, um, because Tom Hanks had written a book then. So that was an awesome experience
Oh,
seeing
that's cool.
Hanks IRL. So yeah, I'd always read the book when I was
Yeah, yeah.
younger. I think we all had, but I only got to the movie like a week ago to prepare for this.
hmm Me too. I used to have the book in my like that was I had that growing up. I remember like it was probably my sister's book. Honestly, when it I don't even know when the book came out, but it's been around for a long time. I remember having it most of my childhood. Um, yeah, and like very impactful. It's like I love the imagery of this movie and like how he was able to capture. It's very different than honestly you would expect a movie like this being based on a book to go,
Mhm.
because it's very real. It's not really a kids movie. I don't think it's kind of
Yeah,
like I don't know, more for adults. What would you say?
I don't think kids would really understand this movie, to be honest, because the
Yeah.
themes are like so mature and heavy. Like I feel like also like it connects to like real life stuff, because what I felt this movie is really about is, well, I can't believe that we're talking in depth about like the themes of Where the Wild Things Are, because genuinely going in, I thought this would just be like a sweet kids movie, and it was just like cool that they got Spike Jonze to do it. But
Uh-huh.
it's more like Barbie, where they like took a kid's concept and then turned it into like a thematic thing. For me, what this movie is about is, it's sad to say, but it's about how like the people in your life are eventually gonna, you're eventually gonna part ways with them, and
Yeah.
like nothing lasts forever,
hmm
and that's it's such a scary thing. But you can embrace them in your life. You can embrace them now as they are, and accept them as they are, and love
hmm
them. And I really wasn't expecting this movie to really hit me deep.
No, it did. It did for me too. Because it's also like it's also about holding up a family. You know, like the when he gets to the monsters, and it's about him like they're all looking for someone to guide them, which I think you kind of see that in his life with his mom and who he looks for guidance. And like there's these interesting parallels with the real life versus the fantasy life or where he goes. You know, I kind of thought it was like all in his head, but they never really say. Um, he just goes
Right,
off
and
on a
I
journey
love
and then he
that.
leaves. Yeah.
And I love that because I was thinking that too, and I love that they never like explicitly say like, is this his journey of like internally of like coming to terms with his dad. I think his parents are divorced. I thought for some reason that his dad was dead,
Yeah, yeah.
but the fact that like his family has separated now.
But
So like
that's
I
like,
love that they
yeah.
never actually say explicitly like, is this in his head or not.
And I thought that too. I was watching it with my girlfriend, and I was like, because it was my first time watching it all the way through the other day, And I was like, is this a parallel for his family? Like, do some of these monsters represent the people in his family, or are they just like a personification of a family that's broken, or what? Like, what is this? And not as direct of a metaphor as maybe I was thinking, but kind of playing with these kind of same thematic things with like broken families and him having to pull them together. And it's kind of cool because usually it's a parent that's doing something like that, but they took it and they're like, we're gonna have this kid be the king of these people and try and hold this fictional family together, right? And then and kind of take on the role of the parent that these animals need, you know, like, or monsters, whatever you call them, wild things. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about the effects? Like
Oh, they're
I don't know if they were like people in suits or animatronics or how they like puppeteered it necessarily, but how do you? It says here it combines live action, performance and costumes, animatronics, and some CGI.
uh-huh.
But I think it blends in pretty well. What do you think?
I thought they were great. I was thinking that as I was watching, is like I think that sometimes they're mostly people in suits, and then they animate the faces, and that's how they make them have expression. But it looks pretty seamless. That's the thing that kind of shocked me, is it doesn't look like a movie that's like made with CG. It looks like everything's caught in camera, which is always kind of a cool thing to experience nowadays, where there's so much CGI being used. You know,
Yeah, it
yeah,
feels really like Jim Henson-esque, like Labyrinth even. So
yeah,
I like that it
totally.
was like it was sort of embracing that and letting like the material speak for itself rather than be like um trying to be like a photorealistic thing like a Disney live action remake because they're not like spoiler, there's not like actual like monsters who look like that in real life.
Yeah, exactly. No, I actually think that the design of the monsters they did a whoever I don't know who the production designer was on this, but they did just such a fantastic job on like grabbing the essence of what they were in the books. To me, I remember seeing the trailer when I think I was in high school, and I was like, wow, that like that feels like a very literal like telling of the book, and then it becomes a very different story. But yeah,
No, and I remember I was like 7 when this movie came out and I remember seeing the trailer and it kind of like I don't want to say scared me off because it didn't it's a lot I guess like slower paced. It's a lot more about the atmosphere than it would be for kids. Like it reminds me more of have you seen Beasts of the Southern Wild? Like it reminds me of
oh
that sort of
yeah,
style.
uh-huh.
You know, like this wild kid like growing up and learning all these lessons. Like
Yeah,
and then you have the fact that like all these themes I don't think I would have understood either if I had watched this when I was really young. So in terms of whether it holds up, I think it holds up much more um like for adult audiences and then you have like you know like adults might have been put off by the fact that it's where the wild things are.
yeah. Well, I wonder, and I don't know how it did in the box office, but I kind of think, you know, we're talking about it being for adults, but I kind of think sometimes these movies, when they do approach it in a more adult way, are kind of good for kids, right? To like be able to kind
For
of take
sure.
us, like watch them in this kind of weird, like fantastical world, so they're able to kind of escape, but they're exploring things that they'll be able to understand later. It's like treating your kids as more mature, you know,
Yeah.
and allowing them to kind of, yeah.
I was like, so that's why I made the Barbie comparison. Like the
Yeah,
gateway is like this kid's IP, but then you're talking about something that's really mature.
I really do think the aesthetic of this movie is just incredible. Like it's so seamless. Some of the effects that they have in this, it looks like it's made for a lot more. Nowadays, it wasn't even made that. It was 2009. I guess it was made a long time
Yeah.
ago. I'm forgetting how old I am. But like it looks better than some movies I would see nowadays. I was thinking.
Catherine Keener and Mark Ruffalo are in this movie together, and I realized they've been in a lot of stuff together.
Uh huh.
Like, they were also like married or divorced or something in Begin Again, and
Hmm.
then they were together in the Adam Project, the Netflix action movie, which I
That's
really
right.
like personally. James Gandolfini, I thought he gave a really good voice performance in this.
Totally.
Like,
He wasn't in the costume. We don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah, the super performers are different. I'm reading that now.
gotcha.
Catherine O'Hara was also really good in this. I like really liked her.
Hmm.
Paul Dano also was great. And then Bob and Terry are the owls who all they do is hoot, like make owl noises,
Yeah.
and they're voiced by Spike Jonze.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, very in character of him to do that.
Yeah, totally.
like the jackass guy. When there was like a bit of controversy about like should this have been made with like such mature and frightening content for kids, the author Morris Sendak, who passed away 3 years after the movie came out, he actually said that he loved the movie and he called it a masterpiece
Wow.
after he saw the film, which I just think that's a cool pointer. And then Spike Jonze actually dedicated her to him and to James Gandolfini
Oh,
after
that's
they worked on
cool.
this film.
I think that's probably shows you what kind of the artist or what the writer was going for the book is like it was a darker book too. I remember that specifically, but that's cool. That connection to her. All of his movies seem to
Yeah.
have like threads, right? Like Being
Uh-huh.
John Malkovich being connected to Adaptation. I don't know the connection. Maybe there's a Where the Wild Things Are book in Adaptation. No, probably not. But there's always like a thread to the next one, which is cool.
Yeah, it's like maybe in her like they're like reading Where the Wild Things Are on their iPad. I
Yeah.
don't remember.
Oh, oh,
Um, so yeah, her was actually nominated for 5 Oscars for Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, which Spike Jonze won, and it was his first Oscar win, his only Oscar win.
wow.
And then Best Original Score, Best Original Song for the Moon Song, which
Mm-hmm.
is playing like I think halfway into the movie, and Spike Jonze is actually credited as a songwriter in that too.
Wow.
Um, and for Best Production Design. The production design I actually think is an unsung hero in this movie
Mm-hmm.
because it's like it's a very like very like minorly elevated LA world,
Mm-hmm.
but it looks so beautiful in my
It does.
opinion.
Yeah, this one is the epitome of Spike Jones in my mind because kind of like what you said is we were both introduced to her first before diving into his filmography, and I think that's kind of a tell of our age, right? Like I'm 30, so like I probably have more of a reason to have watched some of these movies closer to when they came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, her was the first one, and then getting that excitement and kind of diving into his filmography after that. But it's such a good love story. Like and is it's a love story, but is it a love story? Because it's kind of like a letting go story, and like it's very cool thematic elements that go on here. And kind of, am I wrong about this? That there's a connection to Lost in Translation with this movie?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I've with our guests who we ended our third season with, we did a collaboration with the Movie Eaters podcast, and we actually considered I want before we settled on our final topic, which was Scott Pilgrim, which is a great
Mhm.
topic. I'm not trying to say settled. Like they actually brought up the idea of a Lost in Translation her double feature, so it's not just you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think, funnily enough, he and Sofia Coppola were married at one point, but I think they have very similar directing styles and a very similar like Lost Without Love sort of introduction to this person.
Hmm.
Um, that's a really good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's like I had heard somewhere that they were kind of like letters
And
to
Scarlett Johansson,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah. They they're like talking to each other a little bit in this thing. I don't know. Do we know if he remarried after this, or is he still a single man, or uh, is this his long lost love
Yeah.
for Sofia Coppola being put on screen? No, I don't know. Uh,
Right. Maybe this
uh,
was him coming to terms with him being single. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like the
That's kind.
theme.
No, that's cool. Like when movies kind of do that, it feels like going back to his earlier stuff where Charlie Kaufman kind of put himself on the line. This feels like him putting himself out there. Like I said, it feels like the most him movie that he's had, but it is like this is him expressing himself, and I think like an artist like him who's so open to that, you can definitely see it bleeding into there in some ways.
Joaquin Phoenix has always been one of my favorite actors ever since I've like called myself a movie lover and
Yeah.
got into like Gladiator and so on.
Hmm.
But I think this is a very like unsung performance of his because it's just one of his less like out there, and I think he balances like the comedy and the drama of it well. I guess being younger when I watched this, I found him really likable in the
What was
movie,
that experience
and
like for you watching this? What? How old are you? You say you were like 11 when you
I was
watched it?
like 12 when I
Yeah.
watched this movie.
So was this
I
like
think I was just
pivotal?
really intrigued by like I was just really fascinated by like the charm and the heart that this romance had and like the beautiful like meditative tone. Like I don't remember exactly what determined my style, but I think it was around this time where I also like the following year's Oscar fair was also coming out, like Birdman and so on, which like got me to really love like this mature kind of movies. Um but yeah, I think I think also, yeah, just like how meditative and patient the style is in this movie.
Hmm.
Um, like the score and the cinematography, I think are also like really beautiful elements. Hoyt van Hoytema did the cinematography, who
Oh,
also did all of Nolan's films since Interstellar and
yeah,
Nope and Spectre. I think he's one of the best cinematographers working now.
I love him because I'm a huge Nolan fan, and uh,
Yeah,
he just kind of after seeing Oppenheimer, God, that guy's on the top of his game right now. No, this movie came out, and I remember I went on a date back home to see it because I was living in LA at the time, and it's I thought it would be a great date movie, but it was a very very sad date movie to go see.
I
So I don't know if it's like,
think
oh
the end is
God,
kind of touching.
yeah, it
Like,
is, it is.
I don't
It,
think it ends you with like depressing or anything, but
you know what
it kind of is a movie about like human connection and like the fear of it in a way. I think one scene that always really stuck with me is his lunch scene with Rooney Mara.
hmm
Um, I think she kills it. First of all, I love how they're divorced, and then like after this movie, I don't know when they got together, but now they're like
They're
still going
married.
strong in real
Yeah, they're
life.
having a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, that I wonder if that was they did they work together before this, or was this their
no,
movie
but
where
they've
they
worked
started?
together a bunch.
They have,
I
yeah,
don't know if they work like Mary Magdalene or Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. I think this was their first thing together.
yeah.
Since they've been together since 2016. So
Gotcha, gotcha. No, it's great. I think you're right. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this movie is just kind of like I'm going to connect it back to what we were talking about before, but being John Malkovich and adaptation using these actors that are like kind of larger than life and kind of standing out, whereas this one has Joaquin Phoenix that just kind of falls into the performance. It's a very very different.
I don't think he's trying to be larger than life in this movie, though.
Not at
Unlike
all.
like the Master or Joker.
Yeah, yeah. And even those, there's this subtlety to him that like is different than those two actors, because they thrive on being themselves. Joaquin kind of thrives on falling into a performance, and he kind of becomes. He's an incredible actor.
I would compare this to if you've seen Come On, Come On. That's also a very like patient, sort of subtle performance
Yeah.
from his. Um, yeah, but the whole cast is really good in this. Like Olivia Wilde has like a small part that's really good.
Yeah.
She's kind of playing like sort of like not really the it girl, but um or Amy Adams I thought was great. Chris Pratt, this is like sort of his breakout into movies after Parks and Rec, and he's great.
It's interesting, right? Like he just comes in. I forget there was that one, and then it was what was the movie? It was the I
Oh,
just
he did
watched it.
Moneyball first, actually,
Moneyball. That's the one I was thinking of.
which Spike Jonze actually acts in.
Oh, does he really? Is he in that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he has a really small role
Uh huh.
apparently.
Dang, he's he gets around in different movies. That's hilarious.
He's like recruiting his friends a lot. Like
Yeah.
I'm reading it here. Brian Cox has a voice cameo in this, which is weird. Like,
Oh man, he's not the
or,
he's not the little baby thing, right? The not baby the video game thing.
yeah, I love that scene too. That's like such a funny scene where he's playing the alien and the alien's just cursing him out
Hmm.
the whole time, and that's Spike Jonze. I just found that out now. Samantha Morton was originally going to be Samantha, and she actually like was on set like speaking the roles so that Joaquin could respond to it.
Uh-huh.
But then in post production, she got replaced, and it's like so Scarlett Johansson was. I think she was perfect, and it's low key one of my like favorite voice performances. But it's
Yeah,
interesting that they actually had Samantha Morton on set.
yeah. That kind of sucks for her that wasn't able to have that. But yeah, Scarlett Johansson in this movie is really really good. I mean, the song on a beach is just such an iconic song that instantly to me is like, oh, this is something that I'll remember. There's you get that sometimes, like I'm gonna relate. I don't know if people would feel the same way, but to me, it's the same as like John Williams' E.T. score for this, big sequence. But the way that the music connects to the image, that scene for me
Yeah.
was like, oh, this song just like stands out for me. Like
I
I
think that whole section where they're going on like the vacation, I think it's just like beautiful, like meditative filmmaking
yeah,
that I think really shows that, like you said, Spike Jones like was really able to reinvent his style as a filmmaker
totally.
because I don't think Being John Malkovich is as like they're really well directed, but they're not as reliant on like the shot framing or how the score plays in or like the creative lighting. I think here he just showed that like he's creating this really elevated set that like you still see people posting on like film Instagram, like the shots from her.
It's one of those that sits out when you're talking about movies during that time. Right away, I go to that movie. Her was something pivotal for me
For
too.
sure.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm always like hey, like if you're going through to this like only from the lens of like a romantic movie fan, like maybe just know this is a little weird, but if you're coming from this from like you love movies, you have an open mind, um then yeah. And I think like you said, like knowing Spike Jonze even gives another layer to
uh-huh. Totally.
how he balances like the abstract but also does really new things as a director.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. It kind of adds also his connection with if you watch Lost in Translation, which I'm bringing back again, kind of adds another
Yeah.
layer to it. Like this kind
Yeah.
of like mirroring of styles and yeah,
And
it
Scarlett Johansson playing in a way the it girl in both.
exactly, yeah, yeah. There's these weird connections to that, which is awesome. It just adds that layer to it, like you were saying.
Yeah. All right, so this has been a really great director spotlight. Kellen, it's been really great talking to you about your film, and it's been really interesting and really cool finding out that this is the right director to choose for this episode.
Totally.
Do you want to shout out again your social media?
Yeah, my you can follow me on Instagram, Kellen Gibbs. You can follow the film tomorrow on Instagram, or you can see the website, thefilmtomorrow.com. And then our production company is Frame of Reference Entertainment, and you can find that on Instagram. Frame of Reference ENT is our Instagram. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Again, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow us on social media and stay tuned for more great content. Thank you again, Kellen, for joining us. I'm Gal. This has been great.